makes sense. I think that audiences pick up on things, like if there was a day when you maybe didn't ask all the questions about the script, or you didn't see if that felt true to you, that's the kind of stuff that sitting in the seats were like, what? You know, like it comes across, so it's cool to think that this is a little bit more of a micro-focused style. So that kind of winds back to preparation. In seeing this clip again, one of the things that fascinates me as a non-actor is that, like I just said, a lot of this stuff doesn't exist yet when you're doing it, and so you're really doing a lot of heavy lifting in the acting department. So can you talk, Sophie, about how you prepared for this? And like, I'm talking like even nitty gritty, like this is the kind of stuff that I'm speaking for all of us again, like I want to know. It's like, you're, oh now cosmic rays are flowing through your body. It's like, what?
Yeah, I prepared with a lot of cosmic rays.
A lot of microwave on a lot.
Like, yeah, I used to stand by the microwave and just let them flow into me, feel the power. And then I'd go scream at my mum for a while and be like, sorry, Dark Phoenix, sorry. No, I mean, preparation-wise, Simon and I were going back and forth for months with, we mainly studied kind of schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder. When you see the movie, or if you've read the comics, you'll know why. And we kind of went back and forth with material like that, just educating ourselves. And for about 2 days straight, I had this, my headphones in, and I was listening to this YouTube thing, and it was like, what it sounds like and what it feels like to be schizophrenic. And so I would walk around and try and do my daily chores and jobs and run my errands with voices in my head all day, which was really interesting, and I got nothing done. And then before we even started the movie, I mean, we had like 2 weeks of just like straight rehearsals for hours and hours and hours a day. Just, I mean, it wasn't even rehearsals, it was just talking over like every single line of the script and the dialogue and the action, and really like honing it in and making sure it was what we both felt like it needed to be. And that's the thing about Simon, he's so collaborative. And so when you say, you know, if there's something that didn't feel right to you, it comes across to the audience. But I think for all of us, by the time that we started shooting this movie, we knew that everything in that script felt right and felt justified. And so that was just such a gratifying experience to do that with Simon, the most collaborative, most wonderful director.
I'd imagine that you really need that, because it's acting in its best form is very vulnerable to begin with, but especially when you're taking on a certain responsibility, you know, and portraying a character, and when you're studying mental illness like that, that's something that's going to be reaching everyone. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, mental illness means a lot to me personally, and so even more importantly to me, I felt like this movie, you know, so often you can see superhero movies, they can sometimes be a bit like gimmicky and like, we're superheroes and we're going to save the world. But this...
That's a great impression.
But this I felt like, because it does kind of relate so much to the mental illness world, that I really felt that everything had to be a very respectful version of what it is and not make it feel gimmicky, and it never does, I don't think. And that's what I love about this script, is though, even though there's that kind of escapism and you have the superhero elements, the fantastical elements, not once does it kind of make fun of it or make it lighter than it is. It's very real, and I love that about this movie. It's kind of heartbreaking, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it seems so far, just seeing that little bit, it can work on those levels. Because, you know, I just need to mention for my own edification that your eyeshadow is banging in that clip. For any of you out there that care about that kind of stuff, am I right? Yeah. Yes, we're getting a lot of applause for the makeup in this. And going back to rehearsal, Simon, Is there a member of the cast maybe that couldn't be with us here today that you find is like especially collaborative and kind of excited in those early stages to talk through stuff?
I mean, they were all really excited because on movies at this scale, for whatever reason, it should be the opposite. But on these big movies, you get the least rehearsal time. On an independent movie, on a smaller movie, you get more rehearsal time, partly, I guess, because you have less shooting time. So you have to be more prepared going in. You don't have 3 hours in the morning to find the scene. You can't fall behind in schedule. But we had the luxury, especially Sophie and I, and Ty as well, but Sophie and I probably had the most rehearsal time together. And like she said, it was like, wasn't running the scenes and playing the scenes so much as investigating the scenes. And like, you know, taking them apart and putting them back together to make sure that they were in the right place and right order for a reason. I would say the person who I might have collaborated with in a similar way, the closest is Jessica Chastain. Jess is just a friend, and she's someone who was coming to this completely cold. She'd never been in any movie that really resembled this before. And so as opposed to Michael Fassbender and James and Nick and Jen, who we've made, this is now the 4th movie I've made with them, Jessica had lots of questions that started on the sort of superficial science fiction level and then got deeper into the character emotional level. And then she had a lot of thoughts, and we crafted the look together, and her voicing, and even the way that we sort of approached her character, because she's many things in this movie in terms of the sort of roles her character plays, but she is in ultimately the villain of the film. And we talked about how to find a voice for a villain that was unique, and not like, you know, mustache twirly, because that's not something that Jessica would be attracted to as a great actress. And she came up with this sort of metaphor of like, it's not a fun metaphor, so I warn you in advance, and this might make your husband cry too, but is of the veterinarian who has to give the news that your dog needs to be put down. And in this case, it's more than the dog that needs to be put down from her point of view. But that kind of weird, calm, eerie, terrifying voicing was just really different and way scarier than her being shrill or being demonstrative or aggressive. And once she sort of found her way into that, it was like the character locked in.
Yeah. That's the kind of voice that I get when there's been like a horrible accident and I turn into a robot all of a sudden, and I'm like, where did that come from? Ooh, that's great. That's one of the fantastic things about superhero movies these days, is just that there's fantastic actors in these movies. It's like you're getting, like, can you talk about getting Jessica Chastain in this new film? Because, you know, having all these folks in the film, and, you know, people who couldn't be here today, like Fassbender and James McAvoy, it's like, these are legit casts.
Powerhouse cast. And actually, Simon never really thought of anybody else for that role, and wrote it for her. Had no idea whether she'd really be open to it, but it was one of those moments, and as a producer it makes you nervous, because if it doesn't pan out, it's inevitably a much more disappointing moment.
Yeah, that's like naming your movie Being John Malkovich and you haven't asked Malkovich yet.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but he did a really great job on the script, as everybody said, and knew the movie and the ambition of the movie so well. I think was able to communicate all of that to Jessica in the language that made sense to her. So not that she was necessarily opposed to these movies, but I think the threshold she maintains for what it is she's interested in as an actress is extraordinarily high. And I'd say that's true of all the cast, but Jessica is, I believe, you know, if not, you know, in the top 3 actresses working today, maybe high. I mean, she's just an extraordinary actress. So the bar was high, and it required Simon, you know, kind of show the goods as a first timer. That's challenging, but he did.
Yeah, I look at these casts and I'm like, you know, to grab you guys again, and to grab somebody, you know, all these other cast members, these movies have to be intriguing on a different level. So we've reached just about the end of our time today, and before we go, I would like for each of you to choose an X-Men that you would like to be, that is not you. Okay, so who of you all was related to or whose power is awesome? Pick and give an explanation, and then we will allow everybody to pull out their phones after that.
Do you want me to go first so you have time to think of it? Sure, it's an easy one for me. Magneto.
Nice.
1, he was my favorite character growing up. 2, he's just a badass. 3, he's Jewish. And we don't have a lot of representation in comic books. So, and he's just a complex, fascinating guy whose philosophy makes a lot of sense, but whose actions maybe don't. And that's an interesting dichotomy. But mostly because he's a badass Jew.
I go back and forth, but I think in this moment I'm gonna recommit to Wolverine because I mean, and part of it I'm gonna confess is because of how long longer relationship now I've had with that character, but it's also because I love the mix of humanity and rage that coexists and the struggle that he undergoes in trying to work that through, to me, is incredibly compelling on a whole bunch of different levels. And the fact that in the end he can kick your ass, I really like too. So the combo is probably gonna lock me in there. We bought you as much time as we can.
It still wasn't enough. I also like to think I'm just as ripped as Wolverine, but I don't know, this is something that you, Hutch, said earlier in another interview, which I thought was really interesting, kind of going back and forth between Professor X and Magneto in the way that they're kind of a bit like MLK and Malcolm X. I feel like I kind of go back and forth between them, striving to do the right thing, but doing it in vastly different ways and can't quite decide, and feel like I'm either one or the other. So I don't really know. Maybe I'm just like Jean, actually. I'm probably just a bit unhinged.
And to also point out, Wolverine could not handle close proximity to a microwave, the adamantium, I'm pretty sure, like, pretty positive. Okay, Ty, wrap it up for us.
We'll do it quickly. Jean Grey. She's just got it going on.